This is going to be a major week in cricketing world with the IPL Mega Auctions set to be held on February 12 and 13 in Bengaluru. While fans are extremely excited about which player will play for which team, they have been missing one man very dearly. Welcome to News 9 special coverage on IPL Mega Auction, and in this very special interview, I am joined by none other than Richard Madley, the man who made IPL auctions what it is right now in today's cricketing world. Welcome to TV9 Network News 9, Richard.
Oh, that's my pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me back to my second home. You know, I was involved in the IPL from its inception, and I'd never actually been to India before 2008, and then 10 years later, I was a household name. So I feel very much at home, and I'm delighted to join you today.
Absolutely, Richard. And as IPL auctions approaches, the one thing I have noticed every year that your name trends on social media. Fans miss you a lot, but not many know about your journey to the IPL auction table. How did it all start? Where did you start? When did you start auctioning? I know that your family was in the auction set, but where did this sport come into play?
Yeah, well, I'm the son of an auctioneer, the son-in-law of an auctioneer. Auctioneering is in my family; it's in my blood. I have a love of cricket. I played, not to a great standard, but I played to a decent standard. I've collected and sold cricket memorabilia. So I've been immersed in auctions and cricket for many years. And then in 2007, it was that Lalit Modi came up with this wild idea of transforming cricket worldwide by introducing a new league to be held in India, to be called the Indian Premier League. And people were skeptical, to say the least. And then he, having sold the franchises by tender, that was the tender process to sell the franchises. Then he says, we'll have an auction. We'll have an auction of the players. I think there were raised eyebrows around the table, but he tasked IMG with finding an auctioneer who knew about cricket, who was experienced in front of an audience, who could sell in US dollars. Remember, it wasn't rupees in those days, we sold in US dollars. And round the table, a man said, I know the fellow. His name is Richard Madley. The rest is history.
Absolutely. And when we talk about IPL now, we talk about the best league in the world, glamour, money, and life-changing stuff. People going for crores, bonkers of money. But tell us, what were your initial challenges when the brief was given to you, the Asian names, the pronunciation? What were all the challenges that you had to go through before making into the IPL auction set?
Well, my original invitation was to help them draft the rules and regulations for the IPL auction, which are still, I'm proud to say, virtually unchanged from the ones I drafted in January of 2008. And tomorrow evening, prior to the auction, the team owners will be brought in to a room and briefed by Hugh Edmeades about the rules and regulations of the auctions. Yeah. We had nothing to work from at the time, so we had to talk about reserve prices or base prices. Mm-hmm. We talked about increments. We talked about the auction rules and regulations. It was a new concept to cricket, certainly. Mm-hmm. And I think in India, it was also, auctions were a relatively new concept as well. Mm-hmm. So I had to help write the rules and then explain them. And at that very first auction back in 2008, there were people who were very unsure. They hadn't ever been to an auction before. They were team owners about to spend many crore on players, and they'd never been to an auction. So I had to help them through it. So I think initially that it was the unknown. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew what was going to happen that day. And in the Oberoi Hilton Ballroom on February the 20th, 2008, as I got my hammer out.
Yep.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the IPL player auction. And at that moment, the world of cricket changed. It was life-changing, game-changing. It changed the game forever. Mm-hmm. And the auction itself has played an amazing role in the tournament. in that it's not just about the players, it's not just about building the teams, but it's the great forerunner to the greatest cricket tournament in the world. So as a marketing event, it's just got its success written all over it.
Absolutely. Richard, you said that people were a bit skeptical about how things were going to go in IPL auctions. It was the first time it was happening in India or in cricketing world, we could say that. But did you ever expect that this would blow up like it has happened today? The players are going for crores of money. There's excitement from a season to come, and the people are still expecting the auctions the next year. What will happen? It's crazy.
Well, the answer is no. I had no idea. The team owners had no idea. The players had no idea. Nalit Modi had no idea how big it was going to be. And they had no concept about how big the auction would become. I mean, I meet people here in the UK and throughout India who say it's the best day of the year for them. They block out, if it's not over a weekend, they take a day's holiday. This is the highlight of their year for them. So it has become a huge event, and there's nobody who realized what was going to happen, who could foresee the success back in 2008 and what it's all become today.
Absolutely. Richard, one thing I wanted to ask you, that when you look at the auctions now, I'm pretty sure you must have been following the IPL auctions pretty closely. But when you see the auction now and compare it to back the days when you were there with the Gavel, what do you think? What are the differences, major differences in the dynamics or how a team prepares or spend for a player? Did you see any notable changes there?
Yeah, huge changes. I mean, the level of sophistication has increased hugely over the years. It was all very new when the whole idea was first dreamt up in 2008. In fact, 2009, we went to Goa. That's a little known fact that people forget, that we went to Goa for the second IPL auction. It was a little bit more sophisticated. The players actually, the teams at least had names then. And some of the team owners turned up wearing team colors, which was attractive. And we had illuminated paddles. So we were getting a little bit more sophisticated. And then by IPLs 3 and 4, then behind me in the rostrum were the screens that showed who was coming up for sale. It showed who'd spent how much. And so the level of sophistication of the technology certainly improved, and the sophistication of the bidder definitely. You could see that there was much more strategy. I heard that Delhi, for example, had employed an auctioneer to help them prepare for the auction in advance, because they hadn't been happy with their performance the year before. And in fact, the Daredevils, as they were called then, were so much improved after the auction that I actually went to them and I gave them, not the original, but I gave them a duplicate gavel, and I voted them most improved bidders on the day. Wow. We had one or two incidents which you might recall in my 10-year career regarding disputed bids. Yeah. And there was a disputed bid. It was Yuvraj Singh against the RCB.
Kyron Pollard was there as well.
RCB against KKR. Yeah. There was no dispute on Kyron Pollard. No, on a disputed bid. There was a disputed bid in Bengaluru in 2010. KKR, I think, or earlier. KKR had raised their paddle as my hammer came down. I was bidding. Came from the KKR table. Now, what I noticed, the next year, Venki Mysore, new CEO of KKR, he changed the paddle raiser and brought in a new paddle raiser, and their performance was just much slicker, much more polished. And so these little tweaks I can see, because I'm up there on the rostrum and I'm looking at some very big personalities. from Bollywood, from the world of industry, from the world of cricket. And I can just detect these little nuances that probably nobody else in the world would see, but they have got better and better. Well, and I'm sure this weekend on Saturday, we'll see some very sophisticated bidding.
Absolutely. Richard, another very interesting question which I wanted to ask you is that there are reports and it is likely that this will be the last ever mega auction. So do you think it is the right move to scrap off the auction set and move to the English Premier League way that clubs can build their own cricketing ecosystem and groom their players and keep them rather than releasing them year after year?
Yeah, I had heard that this could be the last IPL Mega Auction. There's a part of me that says, oh, that's sad because it was very much part of my life. But I can also see from the team owner's point of view that they got to build continuity within their squads, and they're building a fan base who want to follow their favorite players. And if those players leave the club after 3 or 4 years, then that is frustrating. So I can see the reasoning why from a team's point of view. From a fan's point of view, they love the auction. They play the games themselves. People ask, they tell me that they get to and one of their friends becomes the auctioneer. So that will be missed. And of course, the IPL also realised that, as I said earlier, the auction is just the starting point for the tournament. It is a great marketing event. But if the auctions do continue, and if they do, I do think we ought to think about the next IPL auctioneer. And I've got this view that I think, and I would love to help if I can, the next Indian Premier League auctioneer should be Indian.
Absolutely, and that is where my question was. Next question was that why there have been no Indian IPL auctioneer.
Exactly. So I think it would be logical. I think it would be great for the event. I think it would be great for the tournament. And I say he or she could be coached by Hugh Edmeades, by me, by us both together, and we could perhaps bring on our successor. And perhaps I was thinking of having a TV show where we could say, India's got talent. Do you have what's needed to become the next IPL auctioneer? And we'd make it like a game show and see people come in and maybe find some hidden talent, bring them over to London, train them up here, teach them to speak like an English person. And then the next year, they could come along and maybe they could offer some of the uncapped players at the end of the auction. They haven't got to take that. And in time, they would grow. And I think that would be a great asset to the tournament and to the country.
Absolutely. You have given a terrific business pitch there. And I am pretty sure a few people are going to pick this up from you here.
I'd be delighted to sit on the judging panel. And I think our Ashwin would be keen as well. He's got firm views on what he thinks makes a good auctioneer. And people often ask, what are the attributes of a good auctioneer? My father always said, Richard, remember the 3 Fs. The 3 Fs. You should be firm, you should be fair, but you should be friendly. And if you can do all 3 things at the same time and keep a good pace going and count loudly and try and make no mistakes, then you've got the ingredients of a good auctioneer. Of course, the IPL auctioneer, I also think, really has to love cricket. Whatever you say, you could be a great auctioneer selling old master paintings, jewelry and silver, but for the IPL, you've got to be a cricket fan.
Absolutely, Richard. And back then, what was your kind of preparations you had to do? You know, the names, particularly the Asian names, are very tricky for a European guy. And to get that right, someone like Harsha Bhogle has always emphasized that even when there's a player whose name is a bit tricky, I always try to get it 10 times, 15 times before I go to the com box. And was there a similar sort of practice you had to do before the show went live?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Preparation is important. I met Harsha Bhogle at a match in England a few years ago when we touched on that subject. I think it's good from the auctioneer's point of view. I think it is also courtesy to the player himself
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
he sees that you have made the effort to get the pronunciations right. And often it would be me asking the waiter serving me breakfast if he could help me with the pronunciation, of an Asian name, and I could make my notes, and I try and get most of them right if I could. And then I would look at the sets and see how the players had been divided up, and I would have been sent the players list the same time as you get it. I mean, it
Yeah.
is public, it goes out by 590 players, and I'd start to read through it a week beforehand here in England, and I would fly over. I didn't have to go into quarantine, remember. Hugh Edmeades is locked away in his hotel room in Bangalore,
Yeah.
and I was able to fly in, and I could spend the day preparing
Yeah.
and working through the different scenarios. If player A came out first, and of course it's going to be player B afterwards. But the fact that the auction was actually randomly picked out meant that I couldn't actually learn the order because nobody knew the order of those players. But I would sort of get a feel for the sets and the flow, and then we talk about timing.
Yeah.
Richard, can you keep the pace up? I mean, it's a perennial question. How can we make the IPL auction more interesting? Richard, can't you speed it up?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I can speed it up. I could speed up the auction and we could complete it in 3 hours. But I'd be selling now, and now I'm bid 200, 220, 240, 260, 80, at 280. That player's sold now. Who's coming out the bag next at 300? And that is not the purpose of the IPL auction. Yeah, there are people's livelihoods at stake. And we have to, so I try and keep the pace going at the same time, be very respectful. A lot of money at stake, a lot of reputations, and those, the franchise holders would ask me just to, and you can see them.
Yeah.
Wait, hold it.
We are there, yeah.
Yeah, there. Okay, and I'll wait. I said, I've got all day. In fact, I've got tomorrow as well. I'm not flying back to London till Tuesday afternoon. I'll wait here as long as it takes. So got to bring in a bit of humor there, haven't you? I think you've got to show that you're a human being. Yeah. An auctioneer is not a machine. He's up on stage for the mega auction. Hugh will be getting on stage 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. Could still be there at 5 p.m. Could be. Come back again Sunday morning, 11 o'clock start. Still, you could, depending on when we go to the accelerated process, you could still be there at tea time on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
It's one man on his own. There's no substitute. There's no third umpire. You can't go upstairs. So a lot of pressure.
Absolutely, but, and you did that job phenomenally well, and that is why fans still love you till date.
You'll give them energy. You're a performer, and you've got to keep that momentum going. And you can, because I can read the room. I can see when the franchise holders are starting to nod off. They're getting a bit tired. Wake them up then. You've got to instill that energy into them, and also think about that player whose name is coming out of the velvet bag. That's a life-changing moment for him. Give him your best shot. So, but believe me, at the end of day 2, Hugh Edmeades will sleep well on Sunday night.
Absolutely, and that is where my next question comes in. These are televised events, and there are deadlines that you need to finish an auction day in a particular time frame because of other shows going on as well. But as an auctioneer, you have that duty to get the best out of one bid. But did you ever have any sort of complaints from other franchises that you should have given us a bit more time on that particular player, or some other sort of complaints?
Um, No, I can honestly say that in the 10 years that I conducted the 11 auctions, that's between 2008 and 2018, there were only 2 occasions, very public occasions, when there were disputed bids. They both involved RCB, as it happened. And the other teams involved then was the Punjab, the Kings 11 Punjab, and the KKR. Now, I settled both those disputes immediately. It's very important. I mean, I'm no different to an umpire. In fact, now that I have stopped playing cricket, I'm now qualified ECB level 2 umpire. So I'm now umpiring league cricket during the summer here in England. And actually, the skills of an umpire and those of the IPL auctioneer are quite similar. And in those 2 instances, the 2 instances when there were disputed bids, it is no different than an umpire having to make a decision on what he thinks is right. And in both those instances, I did what I thought was correct within the protocol of auctions. I might not have been popular on both occasions, particularly with RCB, but I did what I thought was correct. And if asked to make the same decision again, I would do exactly the same. And I think, I've reflected on it many times and thought, no, I got those right. But no, I've built a very good rapport with the franchises over the years. And no, we haven't, there's never been a time that they've, because I've seen if they put the hand up, and the Mumbai Indians say, wait, then I wait. And I'll wait as long, and then they'll bid or they'll say, no, well, this is the sign where they've had enough. They're out. So I'd always give them time, especially in those first sets on day one. Marquee players and those specialist sets, 1, 2, and 3. You've got to give them, because that's how they're going to build their team. Now, when on day 2, when you get to some of the uncapped players, you can detect in the room whether there's any interest or not. And if there's no interest, you can read it immediately. Then you move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have let's go back to the first ever auction. When did you feel that this is blowing up, this is going big? Which player set the momentum for you, where you thought that, okay, this is going to be a huge success?
Well, the first, I picked up the vibe that morning. So I think the auction was due to start at 10:30. It was late. But it didn't really matter. We weren't working to a media schedule, so I think we started at 11 o'clock. We were half an hour late, and the team owners were coming in, and rather amusingly onto the Kolkata team. There was a bit of a buzz, and a gentleman sat down, and I nodded at him just to say good morning. And at the end of the auction, when of course cricket had changed that day, a journalist took me aside and said, "Oh, Mr. Richard, what was it like being in the room with Shah Rukh Khan?" And I looked at him and I said, "Who is Shah Rukh Khan?" And he could not believe it. I didn't know that nice gentleman who I'd waved at and said good morning to on the Kolkata table was Shah Rukh Khan. And I think in many ways that was a good thing. I wasn't overawed by being in the presence of Bollywood greats or in the presence of Indian industry magnates. I didn't know any of them. They didn't know me. I was this strange man come from England with a hammer in his hand. There was a buzz around the room. The first player who came out of the velvet bag, well, in fact, in those days, I'm not even sure we had velvet bags. What is it? We had a box with tiny little cricket balls, miniature cricket balls. and the first player out was, and I haven't got my notes here, but he didn't sell. He didn't reach his base price. Would I be? I'm going to make a huge guess. It was Shoaib Akhtar, but anyway,
yeah.
The second player out of the bag, with a little ball from Australia. It's Shane Warne.
Oh.
Now here's a player I'm familiar with, a man with a great reputation, didn't need to be introduced, a base price of $400,000. So I asked for the base price, $400,000, please. Do I see an opening bid? And I looked around, I didn't see a bid. I thought, well, I'll wait a little bit longer, and then up goes the paddle, Rajasthan. In fact, they were called Jaipur. On their paddle, they were called Jaipur.
Yeah.
Manoj Badali raised his paddle and sold. Shane Warne will play one bid only. So we were into the second marquee player of the first ever IPL auction, and we'd only had one bid.
Oh.
And I was beginning to think, well, it's a very smart move by Jaipur, as they were. Warney will do a good job there. You know that. And we all know
what they did.
What did he do for 400,000? And then, of course, I think third or fourth player out, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian wicketkeeper batsman, Mahendra Singh Dhoni. And that's when I saw the paddles go up. And that's when we had an auction. And that's when I knew this is going to work. And it did. And so selling MS Dhoni, I've got to say, it is still a career highlight. I was a wicketkeeper myself, a wicketkeeper batsman. I wasn't very good really at all, but I could relate to a wicket. And he was a player that I admired hugely. I had no idea who he was going to play for because I was in a room full of unknown people to me. But of course, I then got the significance of him going to play for Chennai. And look, he's still there today. So that was the game changer. From that moment on, the auction flew. Prices were unreal. I think if a lot of those owners analysed now what they bid in that first auction, they would be kicking themselves. People were bidding on reputation, as opposed to nowadays, they bid on potential and ability.
Yep.
And so that goes back to your original point about how much more sophisticated the bidders are today than they were back in 2008.
Wow, that's some story, Richard. There, but has any player come to you after the auction or give you a call that thank you so much for changing my life, because you have transformed their lives overnight? These are like insane. The people I know players from rural villages who have their lives changed completely overnight after a bid of 2 crore or 4 crore. Their life completely changed. But have you got any calls, Richard? Thanks so much.
When the first auction was being developed, we considered actually having the players in the room itself.
Okay.
There was talk of having the players there in the room physically. The idea was actually put to one side for a number of reasons. One is a lot of the players were actually playing, either playing domestically or playing on international tours, so they wouldn't be available in the room. And also, it could be slightly awkward if one player made a huge price and his best friend didn't sell. So we decided not to invite any players into the room. After that, I went to the first ever IPL auction, game at Chinnaswamy Stadium, Bengaluru.
Brendan McCullum just blew it off.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have written the script better. I remember that I was invited as a guest, and I was in the private box next door to Shah Rukh Khan. Now, of course, we waved each other that evening, and of course we knew each other then. And then the entire audience turned and looked at Shah Rukh's box, and Shahrukh. Phenomenal experience.
Wow.
So, afterwards, I met MS Dhoni.
Okay.
Because the captains of the franchises had all been invited to the opening tournament. And remember, in those days, the opening ceremony was a big event.
Absolutely.
There were fireworks and circus performers. It really was staged wonderfully. It was much more theatrical in those days. Lalit Modi was prepared to spend a lot of money on the opening tournament, on the closing tournament. So all the captains were flown in, and I met MS Dhoni in the hotel the following day after the auction. I had breakfast with Brendan McCullum. I sat with Ravi Shastri, and meeting MS Dhoni, I was struck first and foremost by who just thanked me for what I had done in a very, very nice way. I had, and I haven't met a lot of the players, but I tend to come over for the auction. If I was watching a game during the tournament, I might see a player from a distance, but I had no reason to interact. Freddie Flintoff and I met up in IPL 2. We went to South Africa, and I met with him there. And he was the first player who I'd made a millionaire for, and he bought me a beer.
Okay.
He said, "Richard, I've got to buy you a beer as a thank you." And I said, "Well, thank you very much, Fred." I had a beer with him. Kevin Peterson was there.
Okay.
And Kevin Peterson didn't even buy me a cup of tea.
Oh, come on. KP, that's so rude.
Of course, he'll deny it now, of course, but no. I saw Ben Stokes a couple of seasons ago. He was playing over here in England. Now, he did offer to come in and buy me a cup of tea at the Cheltenham Cricket Festival, but I haven't really. Gautam Gambhir. I met Gautam Gambhir, and again, what a gentleman. He was just so very grateful to me, very humble, and I am often pleasantly surprised by how humble these players are. There's no ego at large. They are men, I think, of great substance, and I've been very impressed by all the players that I have met. Although there's many whose lives I've changed, and I never will meet. But they all know my name, even though we've never met.
Absolutely, and that is what makes sports cricket very, very special. It teaches you humility. It teaches you how to respond to someone with greatness. It doesn't bring that sort of bitterness that other field might bring to your personal life. But Richard, my next question: one player whom you regret of not auctioning in the IPL?
If I could have one player in my auction who I've never sold before. Remember, I've never sold, and he will never ever be sold at auction. Virat Kohli, and if you think about it, the chances are he will never appear in an IPL auction. But the player who I would have loved in IPL 1 or any stage, pull his name out. Ladies and gentlemen, the next player out of the bag is Sachin Tendulkar.
Come on.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I think somebody said, "What do you think would happen?" I said, "I think if I opened the bidding for him, then I'd still be there today. The bidding would still be bidding would still be going up. They'd be blowing all their purses on the one there. So that would have been an absolute highlight to have had him in the auction. But there again, I also think, imagine if we wound back and Kapil Dev could have been in the auction. Kapil Dev and Ian Botham together. Imagine those two.
Viv Richards.
Those guys would have just been phenomenal. No, I'm very lucky. I've been proud to sell every one of those players. Whether I made them millionaires or I sold them for 30 lakh, it doesn't matter. It's significant to them, and it was significant to me.
Absolutely, Richard, and I have been telling, I have been repeating this same thing for the time since the interview started, that you have done your part perfectly, and you have made this IPL auction, the craze around IPL auction, what it is today. Because without you, I don't think it would have been possible. The excitement, the energy you brought in, the 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 way you brought the entire IPL auction into the world stage, I think that is commendable.
Well, I'm very grateful for you to recognise that, because yeah, it is significant, the time and effort I put in. When the auction starts and everybody settles down, yeah, and the lights go down, the camera is on one person and one person only, and that is the auctioneer. Yeah, and he is responsible for the whole performance. And there is a lot of responsibility, and I took it very seriously. It meant a huge amount to me. I would think I'd be preparing mentally, just as Hugh Edmeades will be now, for weeks in advance. I wouldn't touch alcohol for weeks in advance. I would train and be physically fit. I'd be mentally clear. The preparation is hugely important because there's a lot riding on it. But also, I felt the warmth of India towards me, from fans, from the franchise owners, from the whole nation. They were on my side, and I really felt that they were right behind me, and that really gave me a huge amount of energy and enthusiasm to make sure that the production was just perfect.
Absolutely, and it was. Trust me, I have been again. I'll again repeat the same thing. Without you, it won't be possible at all. But Richard, before we wrap up, just wanted to ask you whether you would love to become back. Whether you would love to come back into the mix of IPL auctions again if it happens in the future, and what would be your message for the fans who keep on make your name trend on Twitter or other social media platforms?
Well, I'm overwhelmed by the invitations I get from the fans to return to India. I've got so many friends and followers out there, both as fans, as players, and I like to think as franchises as well. But I would need to be invited back, and I have to be invited back by the BCCI, and obviously, if the invitation ever came, then of course I'd be honoured to be invited back. But more importantly, I can look back proudly at what I did. I was part of the IPL before anybody'd even heard about it, dreamt about it. So therefore, I have no regrets. I've only got fantastic memories now, and I'm proud of what I achieved. If I could help bring on the next IPL auctioneer, now that would give me just a huge amount of satisfaction. So maybe somewhere out there, actually I'm looking at you now and I'm thinking, you've got the looks. How are you? How would you be with a gavel in your hand? I'm thinking, come over here, and we could train you up, and next year, you never know, a new... Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am the new IPL auctioneer.
Oh, what a moment that would be. Thank you so much, Richard, for your time, and for all our fans watching this video. On February 14 and 12 and 13 in Bengaluru, the madness you will witness. I think this is the man behind what you are going to witness on those 2 days. Richard Madley is the man. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining in.
Thank you very much. And remember, you are sold.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.